welcome back to the Pew, everybody. I am your host, John Edwards, and I am excited today to bring to you another one of these bonus episodes where, if you've been keeping up with us, you know that we have people on that are just gifts to the church, whether they are speakers, preachers, evangelists, priests, bishops. We've had them all on here, and today is no different. Today, my guest is Father Stephen Gadberry. He's a native of the Arkansas Delta, so he's right across the bridge. He's a hometown boy, which I really love, another Southern boy like me. He's a Catholic priest for the Diocese of Little Rock, and he was ordained on May 28, 2016. After graduating high school in 2004, he enlisted in the United States Air Force, serving in Texas, Germany, and Central Iraq. He majored in philosophy and the liberal arts at St. Joseph Seminary College in Louisiana and completed his postgraduate studies in theology in Rome, earning an STB from the Pontifical Gregorian University and a postgraduate specialization in St. Augustine and Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, the God's Rottweiler, if you will. Father Stephen is a fellow of the Word on Fire Institute, which is part of Bishop Barron's Word on Fire Ministries. When not preaching in the pulpit, you can find him exercising, spending time outdoors, coaching a CrossFit class, or playing with his dogs Murph and Shorty, which I want to ask him about those dogs and those names. Father Gadberry was on season 10 of American Ninja Warrior in 2018, which is awesome. And as far as his favorite hobbies, he enjoys listening to music, as well as making music on the piano, guitar, and harmonica. He also enjoys archery and is an avid hunter and conservationalist. So without further ado, my friend, Father Stephen Gadberry.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Father, thanks for being here. Yeah. Like, dude, if we talk about half of what's in your bio, it's going to be one heck of a show.
Cool. Yeah. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I became aware of you and your story and just where God's had you journeying, in your life and the life of others through one of my relatives. I think my father-in-law sent a video over one day and said, "This guy's great. You should interview him." And I get a lot of people sending me stuff, and you never know. And I just sat down and I looked at it, and I was like, wow, this is Word on Fire, and you're a fellow with them and all of that. And I just hit play, and, man, I was glued to the screen for the 58 minutes and 96 seconds or whatever that was. Just enamored that, like I said, that you were right across the river, and just thought, man, what an incredible story and just journey of your life, and just the man that you seem to be through that video. And so, I just wanted to bring you on here to talk about all that and to get into other things. But let's start off a little bit about, you're from Arkansas. So, like, what was that like growing up, and, what part of Arkansas, and how was your young life?
It's God's country, so I mean that's
there you go.
That's a plus to begin with. I mean, the Delta. You're from here, familiar with this area. The Delta is just such a special place. So much history, a rich history, just a beautiful culture. There's nothing big and fancy about it, which I think is what makes it so awesome. It's just, what you see is what you get, and really that's at the heart of the gospel. When it comes to the Lord, what you see is what you get. You get salvation. And, and it's always. Like, the Lord is always inviting us to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be raw, so that, what people see is what they get. What we present to the Lord is, it. Instead of, like this, a double-sided thing. But just growing up there was just an amazing thing. Grew up on a little family farm, small German Catholic farming community. Good Catholic families there. My family's always been Catholic. We grew up in the church, always went to Mass. Days of obligation, Stations of the Cross. We'd pray the rosary every now and then as a family, but it usually ended up in a family fight, or kids fighting, or the parents or grandparents mad at us for getting rambunctious. But hopefully that's maybe a little message of hope for some of the families that try to pray it and end up more stressed than peaceful. But God provides when you just keep showing up. And growing up in the Delta, I learned so much. But one of the big things that I took away from growing up in that environment, that culture, that family, everything, was just the power of the grace that comes whenever you just keep showing up.
Right.
Just keep showing up, and that's the story of love. Just show up, and of course, take the next step. But we're afraid to sometimes even present ourselves, but just keep showing up.
Sure.
It all works out.
Yeah, it's like sometimes, especially in our spiritual life, we feel disqualified because we're not perfect, right? We fall or we fail, or we have our habitual sins, repetitive sins, and the things that just keep, like these snares the devil lays in front of your feet every day that we keep stepping in. And I think so many people need to hear that sort of message of it's not about the fall, it's about getting up.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about like you're going to take your licks, you know. I'm a big Rocky fan, and there's one of those movies that like he's got a speech where he's talking about it's not how hard you can, you know, how hard you can hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And it's, you know, of course it's a Rocky movie, so you take it with a grain of salt, but like it just, there was some wisdom in that. Yeah. Because a lot of times we feel like, all right, you know, I'm just going to lay down, but there's so many stories in this world where people have been through so much pain, so much loss, so much anything, like, you know, whether it's an addiction or loss of life or things like that, but they keep getting up. And the saints, you know, they were that way too. I mean, we can look at them as these perfect, you know, they were born, they came out of the Bible, out of the womb with the Bible and holy water, and like, here I am, world, you know, bring it on. But they weren't. They were broken. I mean, you look at St. Augustine. I mean, you studied, obviously, him and did some work on him in Rome. And he was a broken mess for a lot of his life. You know, and I know you've had loss and stuff in your life, too. I mean, you're talking about, you know, getting up and moving forward and walking. Like, I know you had some loss early on in your life. I mean, would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm a small little family. I was the second of 5 kids altogether.
Sure.
May 5th, 1994, we had a vehicle accident. My father, my older sister, my younger sister, and myself. My dad was 32. My older sister was 11. My little sister was 3. I was just 8 at the time. But long story short, caught some gravel on the side of the road, went off further in the ditch, caught a culvert, and just started cartwheeling. And we were all thrown from the vehicle. My dad, he died on the way to the hospital. And my sister, older sister, Courtney, she was 11. She died immediately. Actually, the vehicle landed on her. Dad had punctured lungs. My little sister, Allison, she was just 3. She was crushed. She was sitting in actually my father's lap. And so when we hit that culvert, he just crushed her between the steering wheel. And so she was in a body cast, just beat up. Came over to Memphis right here, St. Jude's, and they really took care of her over there. I ended up with just a broken ankle, some scratches and stuff, probably some brain damage too. That's maybe what's wrong with me now. That and all the childhood stuff, bicycle wrecks before that. But yeah, life can hit hard. And that changed my life. So Mom and Dad just found out that they were pregnant, and the little, shortly after the accident, Mom goes for like a checkup or whatever, and the doctor was like, I got some news. And she's probably thinking, oh gosh, all this stress, my kid's dead, and I'm gonna have a miscarriage.
Sure.
And the doc was like, well, there's another one in there, you got 2. So she's got twins. Yeah. So the I'm one of 5 kids. Older sister has passed away. Now I'm the oldest of my 3 other siblings. Mom never remarried, but the thing with loss, it hits. It hits when you least expect it. It's not fun at all. You can learn a lot through it, though, and it just the need to get up. Yeah, get up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you were probably been about 8 or so around that time. Yeah. I mean, and God bless you for sharing that. I don't even know I couldn't imagine. I mean, I lost my mother to cancer, and that was horrible. I couldn't imagine losing a sibling and then just having one in the hospital and all of that. So when that accident happened, were you the one that kind of got out and got up and how did you guys get picked up? I mean, did somebody come along the road and see you, or how did all that go down?
Yeah, so it was, I don't know, probably 6 o'clock, 5:45 or so in the morning, I guess, on a Thursday morning, these country roads in Arkansas. I crawled up to the road, and a car was driving by, flagged him down. But he would have seen the accident and probably would have stopped anyhow. But so I, flagged him down, but told him, my mom's phone number and everything, and then so he went and called, and the medics and all the doctors and everybody came and did what they do.
Yeah. And what was so all of a sudden your dad's gone, which I couldn't imagine that. What that must feel like, and like I said, the loss of a sister and things. You said so. Now you're the oldest, so you would have been the oldest at the time. Mm-hmm. So you had to become sort of this father figure at 8 years old in your home. Is that accurate? I mean, because it was really your mom and you, and
Mm-hmm.
she's pregnant and all these other things. Like, did you have to start sort of being the man of the house at that point?
Yeah, actually, it was a blessing and a curse in different ways. I'll just sort of the blessings of it. It's just so amazing how, growing up without a father, so many other men stepped up and were just good mentors to me, and so they showed me how just the power of fatherhood, even whenever it's not your actual father, and just seeing God's humor in that. If I could use that word even in this context, he's his bigger story. He's got a plan.
Sure,
he's got a plan. It's just keep getting up, keep trusting, and turn to the next page. This page doesn't make sense. I use that image a lot. People come to me often in priestly ministry with all these crises, and they're just ready to throw in the towel. And I use such a simple image of if they're reading a book or watching a movie. Every good book, every good movie has these plots and twists and turns. And when you get to the end of the chapter, the last paragraph, something always happens. You think, well, why did this happen? This is not what the character has been doing the whole time, or this is not the situation. But there's a twist. And so you don't think, oh, well, I wasn't expecting that. I'm done with that book. You go to the next chapter.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Same thing with a movie. If you're at the theater or something, and a scene changes, and you think, well, that's not what I paid for. I'm leaving. Taking your Skittles and then walk out the door. Like, no, you stay and watch it. But in life, whenever we're part of that story, it's so easy for us to turn it off or close it instead of going along. But so the Lord's hand was there, having to grow up, kind of be the father figure, whatever that meant for a little kid. I learned a lot about fatherhood. I learned a lot about just trust and just doing work. It had challenges too, because in a way, just being very vulnerable, I didn't get a childhood.
Yeah.
So even if it was a lie that I was believing, I had to grow up and be the man of the house. And so therefore, that means you can't have fun. You can't do things that are leisure or playful, because you have to be the man. You have to be the one to provide, even though I was a little kid. That still haunts me today. Just being very vulnerable, connected to that. It's hard for me to have leisure and not feel guilty about it. I talk to a lot of adults that feel the same way. And I think whenever the Lord, speaks of being childlike, that's one of the things he's speaking of, just the ability to totally abandon yourself to the present moment, because that's what playing is.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what leisure is. It's an abandonment to the present moment, and that's the only place to encounter God. So, anyhow, I went down a bunch of bunny holes.
No, please keep going down those roads. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I had to grow up quick. It taught me a lot. And
was there ever any resentment for that? Did you ever get angry? Like, why does this fall to me? Or why? Like you said, I can't just go and do what I want to do. I've got this guilt of I need to be providing. I need to be, here for everybody else who needs me. And I've heard so many families that grow up sort of in a similar manner of just this sort of disappointment, anger that followed them because of it. But also too, like a lot of times when things like that happen, you're confused. You don't understand, like, why did God allow this to happen? Did you ever kind of go through a stage where you were angry at God? And because I know I did. I mean, I didn't really have an excuse. I was, 30, whatever I was. I guess I was in my mid-30s when my mother died, and I was very angry with God. I was just like, here I am, this, I told you a little bit about my story, but like, here I am, this scumbag kind of lying drug addict loser, and I'm alive, and my mother, who was a good God-fearing woman, is not here. And if I sort of turned that anger towards God. Did you ever experience anything like that? I mean, growing up?
Over the last couple of years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's one of those, just again, I'm pouring it all out here.
Sure.
It's one of those things you grow up, and I really compartmentalized it, pushed it away, shoved it down, ignored it. You just got to keep showing up. You got to take care of all these other things. And, I'm saying this, like, my mom is a saint. She busted her tail and went without so much. Like, she made so many sacrifices for us, and she's really, one of the key teachers in my life that just taught me how to just show up and figure it out.
Sure.
It's going to be stressful. It's going to be crazy and chaotic. just figure it out and get it done. She did that. But so had her, my grandparents, uncles, some of my aunts, that were just great examples that helped me. But so the resentment, so they taught me a lot growing up, but I compartmentalized it, and I never allowed myself to feel those emotions growing up. And it's actually only within probably the last year or so, last couple of years, that I really became aware of these wounds that I've been blocking off.
Yeah.
And over the last year in particular, I've been working through them with my spiritual director, and it's been very freeing. It's been kind of painful, but it's been very freeing to say, no, this is a wound. This is a resentment. This is a pain that I still have. And then, working through that doesn't mean that I hate my family. But I mean, it requires me to recognize a wound or something there and get healing. But to answer your question, and surprisingly, just over the last year and a half.
Yeah, it is, and it's so funny, man. It's not funny really, I guess, but it's just when you think about it, like especially with men, and we have a lot of men that listen to the show. We act out like we're always, and we did a show about this a couple weeks ago called the Battle Within, and we're talking about how it's like, man, we want to grab our broadsword or our axe, if you will, and go out there and start whacking everything out there. Right. Because we don't understand that the real battle's in here.
Sure.
That we have all these unhealed wounds. And like I said, I had a father wound, and I didn't realize in my life until after all of this, and then now even recently, that I had a wound of inadequacy, right? I was never enough. There was nothing I could do to hear I'm proud of you or I love you from my father growing up. So that inadequacy just was born in me and sat there. And so I can look back at parts of my own life where I've ruined relationships and things because, I was like, well, that guy's a jerk. No, he's not a jerk. There's nothing wrong with him. There's something going on in here. And for some reason that's rubbed up against that. And, if we don't realize that we all have those wounds and we don't realize that we're giving the devil like an open place to live in our hearts. And he takes those things and he turns it around and he turns us against God. He turns us against others. And it's amazing that you're talking about that because I don't think that we hear enough about the need for healing. There's great people out there like Sister Miriam or Dr. Bob Schutz and people like that that are focusing on it. But sometimes I think we hear things like that and we think, well, that's great news for somebody else. Right? And we don't think about how it applies to our life and that, man, maybe I have some things wrong with me that I need to deal with too, that the Lord's trying to bring to light, not for pain and suffering, but to come through them and to be healed.
Yeah. Satan, he loves to manipulate that. I mean, it's in our heart. John Eldridge, maybe you've heard of him.
Wild at Heart.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So one of the big things he puts out, and that through these different programs he has, is the desire to to fight a fight, to defend a woman, like to defend your love, and just this desire for adventure,
sure,
battle, and there's something good and holy about that. But Satan can really manipulate it because if I go into battle protecting the people I love as an escape from the things that I need to address inside, and then I crash and burn, well, who would judge me in a bad way? Because I died in a valiant way.
Yeah.
We don't want to open up our hearts and say, I'm totally helpless with this wound that I have right here, this history right here. We don't want to die on this hill.
Sure.
This scar that we have, we'd rather die out there because if I crash and burn, at least it was heroic.
Sure.
But we don't associate inner healing with something that's also heroic, which is very terrifying, and it requires immense vulnerability. But that is where love happens.
Sure,
the trust that comes in love, and then the freedom. Golly, it's just amazing. Yeah, but how Satan can really distract us from those wounds, even by convincing us to do good things.
Sure. Well, and even bad things too. Like you look at it and where does judgment and gossip usually root a lot is like, well, if I'm out there, looking at everybody else, I could compare myself and at least I'm not like that guy, right? Or at least I'm not like her. And and then also when you're passing that judgment, you're also trying to sort of, whether you know it or not, lift yourself up higher above something else. And the devil uses that stuff too, those wounds, to continue to draw us into other sins, right? If we don't heal those, we wind up in a lot of places and hurting a lot of people. And, I fight this fight all the time because I'm in men's ministry, and I see all this stuff where it's like guys with knights and axes and swords. And I'm like, man, it just needs to be a guy sitting there with a Bible going like, enter my heart,
Sure.
That's the battle, not the whole Braveheart thing all the time. I mean, that's needed too.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, we can't we can't really go out and affect the world in the way that God wants us to until we've really worked on what's in here.
Bingo.
And that's, and that's the beauty of our stories is hopefully, when we've had things happen in our life that they bring us back to certain points in our life where we can see where God is enacted in our life and things like that. I know you talk about how important our stories are a lot. But you mentioned battle. You went off to battle, really? I mean, do you think now looking back at what we talked about a little bit, do you think that had anything to do with why you went in the military? I mean, you went in the Air Force and were decorated from what I understand from watching your story. Do you think any of that had anything to do with it, or was it just a desire to go out and serve? Or
yeah, I think both of those desire to serve. I was looking back, I had no reason for going to the military at all. I loved being at home. I hate traveling. And I wanted to do work, and there's always work at home. So I could have done all that stuff there. But looking back, I see clearly the Lord was using that opportunity to pull me out of everything that made me comfortable and to really work on me in a one-on-one way. So the whole battle thing, there was, I did a term in Central Iraq, so that was, that was something, but it wasn't. I drove a forklift.
Okay.
So, I mean, we still got shot at every day, rockets and stuff like that come in. But I mean, I got so many brothers and sisters, in the military that were in Humvees every day and their armored vehicles, all this other stuff that were really fighting it. But the the whole battle experience going over there was just another little step in the journey.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, but so you went into the Air Force. How many years were you in there?
Just 3.
So 3. Mm-hmm. And so you're overseas, you came home. What did you want to do? Did you have any idea were you going to be a career military man at the time, did you think? Or where did you think your life was going to take you after that?
Well, I went in to be a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape,
That sounds awesome.
Individual guys. It's basically training people for war and stuff like that.
You think your growing up in the country had something to do with that?
It's just kind of cool. It's I get to play with sticks all day and go play in the dirt and hide and seek kind of things. So I went and to do that, but got washed out of the course, and then got put into logistics. So basically, a mailman and moving people and stuff. Mailman and a travel agent. You think of it like that, but. And I was really frustrated that I got put into that job. But it was so prophetic, the way that the Lord was working through that, because I had to, for the mission to be complete, I had to help plan and coordinate who was being sent on the mission.
Okay.
And also, when it came to materials, I had to figure out and know what people needed, where I could be found, and how I could get it from A to B so that the mission could continue. And that's priesthood. It's finding discerning with people the charisms in their heart and how the Lord is working in their heart, and then identifying, praying with them, helping them to discern what mission the Lord is sending them on, where they need to be sent to. And then also for delivering the goods, the way I preach the gospel to every person is different.
Sure.
And so the way I package what's being delivered, it requires situational awareness, history, where it's coming from, where it's going. But I just see how those little parallels there. So I went in to do that. The survival job got washed out, put into logistics, and that's when just the Lord was really, really started working. And I was going to go in for a career, because 20 years you can retire before you're 40. Isn't that amazing? And I'm 36 now, so I'd be 4 years away from retirement. That's crazy, if you think about it like that. But once the Lord put it on my heart, priesthood, which really, really came hard and heavy whenever I was in the military, I took it and ran.
Yeah. So how did that happen? So he put it on your heart, hard and heavy, as you said. Mm-hmm. What was that like? Did you just wake up one day and God's like, be a priest? Or
Yeah, kind of. Nothing fancy, nothing exciting. It was the Lord was patiently persistent with me. So when I was in the military, I kept going to Mass. For me, it was growing up. We always went to Mass. It wasn't an option. Something that confuses me now, and really saddens me, is I'll see a family and a couple of their kids won't be with them, and I know they got little Peggy or little Pete at home or in their family, but I don't see them. I'm like, oh, is Peggy sick? Where's Pete? Is he at home? Is he okay? Oh yeah, they said they didn't want to go to Mass today. And I'm thinking, they're 9 years old. And
Yeah.
they're telling you what to do.
Yeah.
So like growing
Yeah.
up, that wasn't the environment for me. Like if I told mom or my grandma or grandpa what to do, they reminded me pretty quickly that
Yeah.
they're the ones that tell me.
Probably
what to
with
do.
a knotted end of a
Yeah,
switch or
yeah.
something, right?
Yeah. So when I went to the military, it was a non-negotiable. I went to Mass and kept going to Mass. Really, struck up great friendships with a lot of families there at the church. A couple of the priests got to know really well, and go to the chapel pretty much every afternoon to not to pray, because that would have been really holy. But I was going to wait for the priest, the priest who was we always go working out and then go out and eat, stuff like that almost every day. He always finished a lot later than I, so I would just wait in the chapel. I'd pray
Sure.
a little bit, maybe read the Stations of the Cross or some scripture or something. But most of the time I just slept. And just regular, steady contact with the church. Regular, steady contact with the church. That was one thing. That regular, steady contact with the people of the church, with their beauty and their warts, all their good and bad, and regular, steady contact with the priests, with
Sure.
their strengths and weaknesses. And through that, the Lord said, like, just put these random thoughts into my mind. And then these random thoughts became more regular, and then they even more coincidental. And then before long, I could see it was just a clear invitation.
Sure.
And so it just kind of unfolded very simply. But once it was on my heart that this is maybe the Lord's calling me to this. I prayed hard about it and discerned, and then went to seminary, and there's just history.
Sure. Did you think, looking back now, do you think maybe growing up without a father kind of led you to sort of want to be a father for other people?
Wow, that's a good question.
I'm going to move this up
Yeah.
a little bit too. So just in case it's in your, you can move the mic over, but I want to make sure it's,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
people can hear you.
that's a great question. I think that there's some of that. I just need to pray through that. I haven't thought about that yet. There's just initially thinking about it. There's definitely those parallels. I was always there for my siblings. Did what I could to help my mom, and just had fantastic examples of men. Oh, this is actually a big thing. I've never made this connection. So many men who made a conscious and free choice to father me, even though they weren't my father.
Oh,
I
wow.
wasn't their kid. They chose fatherhood out of love. This
Wow.
kind of hit me like right now. Isn't that what God does with us? He loves us into existence, but it's because he chooses to love us. It's not like he's like, oh, I'm stuck with this kid. Like, it's like, I choose to be stuck to this kid. Like,
Yeah.
it's my free choice to be with this knucklehead. Like, I love him. And I'm going to stick by this kid, by this person. So, wow, okay, that's something for me to pray through. But yeah, so growing up in that, the fatherhood thing, I think being a father to others, and, even amongst my friends, looking back, I would have buddies who would call me for all sorts of advice, even when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And just like, well, I don't know. But I would just hear them out and share a couple little things and help them. But wow, okay, you gave me some stuff to work on. I need to pray about that.
Well, man, but isn't that great though? You're sitting here talking about men that you used to love, and as men, we're also innately selfish, right? Like we want what we want, and that came to fruition in my life, and then the drugs just increased that 1,000-fold, right? That I struggled with. But oftentimes we go through life and we just sort of have our head down with what we have going on in our own life and our own struggles, and we forget, that out of the 2 commandments that Jesus gave us was love your God, which a lot of us do well. Some of us don't. But most of us, if we're into our faith, are doing that well. But it's that loving of neighbor, right? That's hard, because that means I have to care about somebody else. That means I have to deal with other things. That means I'm inviting baggage that isn't my own into my life. But what a beautiful thing when you look back and you think it, like, what a gift those men were to you, and how it's led you into this beautiful life that you have now as a priest.
It's beautiful, and it's still broken too.
Yeah, amen.
I just moved parishes the beginning of July, and it's been a great transition. It's been really good. It's been eye opening too, because when you breaking out of the structure, the routine that I was in, I mentioned earlier, just keep showing up. That's good, but it can also create a monotonous routine.
Yeah.
And so something about this transition has slapped me in the face to show me how lazy I am in some areas, and how comfortable I want to get.
Oh,
like
man,
we seek comfort. It was kind of like one of the points that you were alluding to a second ago, it sounds like. But just comfort, how we will make ourselves so uncomfortable in the pursuit of comfort. Like we will go to radical extremes just to make ourselves feel more comfortable. And one of the things the Lord has really been convicting me of since this transition has been how comfortable I've let myself get. So trying to seek out things that make me uncomfortable, and to do, not by doing radical things, because those are actually pretty easy to do. Because if I try something radical and I fail, okay, well, it's understandable.
It wasn't meant to happen, or it wasn't meant to work,
But if I can't wash the coffee mug that I just drank coffee from, and I leave it on the counter for 3 days, well, I'm a loser. Like, how come I can't do that? I'll share an experience similar to that. In my previous parish, the Lord, he hit me between the eyes. Just such a loving hit. And I hate doing laundry. Hats off to parents with couples with kids. I'm a single guy. I've got 2 dogs. But I can't believe how much laundry I go through.
Sure.
And I hate folding laundry, especially knowing that I'm going to wear it within 2 days. So why waste time to fold it if I'm going to put it right back on my back, So there was a recliner at the old parish I was at, in the rectory there, and I would have my clothes piled up in it.
Sure.
And I was walking through the living room one day, and the Lord just stopped me in my tracks. And I kind of heard with the ear of my heart, just the Lord speaking so clearly. He was like, man, if you can't fold the clothes in that recliner, how do you expect to take care of the souls in your parish?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, jeez. So every time that buzzer goes off in the dryer, it's like, okay, I've got a lot of room to grow, but I don't know where I was going with that. But
no, man.
Showing up and doing the work and the comforts that we seek, we can get so comfortable.
Yeah. Well, you did your studies on Pope Benedict XVI, and one of my favorite quotes of his is, "The world offers you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness." Yeah. And I think that's what we struggle with so much, and just intentionality too. Like you're talking about getting in just a mundane rhythm, and I think that's what happens to a lot of people in the faith is we just keep showing up on Sundays and we're checking the boxes, or we're showing up at our nights meeting or our men's meeting or our coaching thing or whatever else we're doing to help be a good dad or a good husband or a good man. And we forget that it's always supposed to be an encounter and an invitation with the risen Lord, right? Like all these things are an invitation to grow as who we are, to grow in our faith, to grow in virtue, all of these things. And I think for so many Catholics today, when you look around the church, we had COVID and a lot of people hadn't come back. And I think it's sort of the same thing. Well, I was going all these years and I hadn't gone in a year or 6 months, and my life's really not that different. I still have money. I still have a job. I still have my Netflix or whatever else. And we get into that place of comfort. And so it's refreshing to hear, a priest talking about that and preaching about it, because I don't think we hear that enough. I think it just is, hey, you keep chugging along the little engine that could, and going at that steady pace, and you'll get to heaven eventually. But our Lord actually challenges us to do more than that and to be more than that in our life.
Yeah, recent scripture passage we just had in the Sunday Mass was getting through the narrow gate. They put it on the Lord, say, hey, how many are going to be saved? And he says, well, he doesn't give a number. He says, hey, listen, the gate's narrow. There's going to be a bunch of people, but there's going to be a lot that aren't strong enough to get through. And then he lays out all these different images. And one of them is the master who locks the door. Then you're going to knock on the door, and the master of the house is going to say, I don't know you. And the response is, well, we ate and drank with you.
Sure.
you were taught in our midst. We were together. And it's one thing to just do stuff.
Sure.
We can all complete tasks, but I mean, what's the intention? That's the point that you were getting. I mean, what's the motive for doing it? And that was just a big wake-up call for me as I was praying through that scripture, getting through the motions. And so with the COVID thing, so many people left because for them the faith was just a thing that they checked the box in.
Sure.
So they took the church aspect out, they took God out, Jesus out, and replaced it with another to-do thing. So they're just checking boxes. The faith is not a box check, but it's like it's the page on which everything else is written. Like it's the foundation on which everything else is built. And it's not something you just check the box and get it done. It's something that allows you to complete all those other things.
Yeah. That's one of the scariest verses in the Bible to me is when he says, be gone from me, evildoers. I never knew you. Yeah. And it really made me start thinking, like I had when I became Catholic and really actually started living as a Catholic. I was Catholic 11 years before I was ever Catholic. But I remember an older lady coming to me and saying, like, you got to pray a rosary every day or you're not Catholic. So I found myself by the bed every night, going to bed at 10:30 going, man, I got to go to sleep. Dang it, I'm not Catholic if I don't pray a rosary. Hail Mary, full of grace, Hail Mary, full of grace, Hail Mary, full of grace, Hail Mary. And one night I felt like in my soul I heard, like, stop it, put it down. Like, you're disrespecting my mother, if that's all this is going to be. And this is one thing I preach about all the time when I have an opportunity and the Lord calls me to go and speak is just, are we doing this to grow in a real relationship with Christ? And often that can be put off as a Protestant thing, that's, and especially since people know I'm a former Baptist, they kind of think, well, you're still leaning, But I think it's such a gift that I had that, because I try in everything in my life, even going to daily mass. I'm a daily mass communicant, and when I go in and I struggle and I think, like, let me respond to this. Don't let this be, well, I went to the post office and then I went to here and then I stopped by mass and had some bread and some wine and went home. Yeah. But, like, let this really change my life, and always remember, like, that. Remember what was done for me, right, and what he's done. And so you make a great point about just that comfort in the monotony and where we can get, and how we need to keep our mind always on God's love for us and his desire for us to know him better.
One of my favorite phrases is agi quod agis. St. Ignatius of Loyola is one that really made it popular amongst his brothers and everything. But agi quod agis, it means more or less, almost literally, do what you're doing.
Sure.
Do what you do. Another way of understanding it, the fuller context, is like, whatever you're doing at the present moment, give it everything you've got. And that's the path of sanctity. So if I could try to rush through the rosary, but I'm not giving it everything I've got. I'm just getting it done. And so in that regard, it would be better to pray one Hail Mary the best I can than try to get through 50 of them just to get them done.
Sure.
But just that aspect of being present to the present moment is what made saints saints. And they were so present to the present moment. If they were with somebody, they were with that person.
Sure.
If they were working in the yard, they were working in the yard. And it's that I always give that to people and in the parish, even to myself. Like, okay, if I'm doing ministry, I'm going to do it everything I can, give it everything I've got. If I'm working out in the garage, that's what I'm focusing on.
Sure.
Everything else is on the back burner. And I'm going to do that the best I can, because that's the present moment. And doing that the best I can in that moment is going to give glory to God. If I'm hunting, I'm going to hunt the best I can. It's all or nothing. It's sort of this sort of crash and burn mentality. Like, let's do it.
Sure.
Kind of like St. Peter, kind of.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, that's another trick of the devil, right? To get you to focus on the past. I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified. God can't love me because I'm this. Or anxiety about the future. And both of those things are meant to take your eye off the present moment, because that's all you can really affect. Right. And so we get caught up in those things. And I find myself all the time doing it in ministry and, being a nonprofit. You start going, Lord, like, there's nothing's coming in, or there's no engagements, or there's nothing. And you can get caught up in that, or say, like, Lord, what do you want me to do right now? Yeah. Because all that's doing is making me worry and not be a good husband or a good father and all those things. But, you talk some about, the examples in your life. I know you talked a little bit in your story about a priest that really inspired you and made you want to become a priest or the type priest that you are now. I think it was Father Stan. Is that correct? Would you share a little bit about him and, like, what mattered to you about him? And
he's just a man.
Yeah.
Father Stanley Rohrer, priest from the Archdiocese of Oklahoma, just across the state, and German Catholic farming family. Grew up in it. It worked. Very quiet, very shy guy. Just hard worker. Yeah. And eventually, went to seminary, and he actually flunked out. They kicked him out because he couldn't get the grades. And so that's kind of the joke at that seminary, that they anyhow kicked out with a future saint.
Yeah, one of the holiest people ever. Like, please leave.
He eventually met with the bishop after that, and was just like, the bishop knew that there was something different about this guy. He goes back to seminary, another seminary, finishes, gets his work done. Not super bright, but not the not the lowest in the class. Just he does what he can. He's eventually ordained, and then he he goes to Guatemala, ends up, after a few years of ministry in Oklahoma City, there's a call for missionaries to go to Central America, South America, different countries that needed priests. So he volunteers to go. Long story short, gives his life completely to the people down there. It's ironic. He flunked out of seminary because he couldn't learn Latin, but he goes down there and learns Spanish within a very short time. And also one of the dialects, Sutuil, for the people in Guatemala where he was, just almost like how God's hand was there, because he knew the people he was going to be serving, sends him down there. It's really cool what he did, though. He went and, of course, did priestly ministry, mass, confessions on a regular basis, but he used the things that he grew up with to bring Jesus to those people. He taught them how to farm in a way that they didn't know how to farm before. So different agricultural techniques from here in the States that he had learned, he took it, and they just, the community exploded. They were able to farm so much more efficiently, have more produce, they could sell it and then make more money for their area, put in a radio station, dug wells, put a hospital in, built a hospital. He loved his people, and he was willing to, he didn't just preach the gospel to the people, he lived the gospel. And he didn't just tell the people they needed Jesus in their daily lives. He was with them in their daily lives. He would go and work in the fields with them and just sweat. So he had that sweat equity with them. Like they knew they could trust him. And that terrified the government. It was a time of great political upheaval, 70s and 80s. And they didn't like that, because if the people trusted him, there was a group of, it created a community.
Sure.
And that scared them because it was a threat to their power. And so he ends up on a hit list multiple different times. He's run out of the country a couple of times. Every time he comes back, he's in angst. He would stand in the doorway of his house and just watch the sunset, just knowing that he had to go back. He told his bishop, he's like, I got to go back. And his famous line is, the shepherd cannot run at the first sign of danger.
Wow.
The shepherd cannot run. He went back and eventually was killed. And just a beautiful thing after his death, his family, they said they wanted the body to be buried, in Oklahoma City. We're going to dedicate his shrine. I say we because it's our Catholic faith. It's all of us together. November 4th in Oklahoma City.
Oh, wow.
He'll eventually be buried there, interred there. But his body's there, but his heart is in Santiago Atitlan in Guatemala, wow, where he served and where he died. And that was his family's choice, because they said, his body is from here and everything, but his heart
was there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Just, I think the thing that made him so extraordinary for me is that he was just a simple dude. He just woke up, broke a sweat every day working, celebrated Mass, loved the people, loved the Lord, went to bed and repeated.
Yeah.
Just a hard worker, just a grit would be a good word that would describe him.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's a German farm family too. I imagine there's a connection there, but yeah, what a amazing life. I mean, that's what the saints are supposed to do, or the people that probably will be a saint one day in his case. Supposed to inspire us, right? Mm-hmm. Like, not to, we can look at them oftentimes as like these lofty things that we'll never be able to achieve, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can't, like you were talking about being the present moment, and it made me think of John Paul II. Mm-hmm. Like, he did all these amazing things, but one of the things that I always found was so interesting about him was, people would complain that worked for him, because if he saw somebody he made eye contact with him, he might stop for 3 hours and he was late for some interview or some meeting, and they would be mad. Like, I remember reading, I think it was in Jason Everett's book, that it's a phenomenal book he wrote on him. He was talking about, like, if he ever knew there was, like adoration or something, or the Blessed Sacrament was exposed somewhere, like, he wanted to know when he visited. And they were telling this story about how he had to be somewhere, and his I hate to call them handlers, but the people went before him, just kind of were like, all right, shut the door to that room, put a bookcase in front of it, like, and that he was walking down the hallway and apparently made it right past this door, and then stopped and turned around and wagged a finger at everybody and moved the bookcase, and went in there. He felt the presence of of Jesus in the Eucharist, and then proceeded to, like, lay prostrate on the floor for 3 hours.
That's awesome.
It was late to meetings, but like, you see this, and sometimes you can be so intimidated by the loftiness of it all. Mm. But at the end of the day, like, that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be something that inspires us. And to hear the life of Father Stan, and how he just has inspired you to be, a better priest, a better man is what it's all about, and it's not to be this bar that go, well, I shouldn't even try because that's way too high for me, but trying to just be inspired by that.
Yeah, there's so many great saints and so many examples. There's no cookie cutter Christian.
Sure.
And every one of you're the only you in the whole history of humanity, past, present, and future. Like, let that just sink in. I'll think about that every now and then. It's just, wow, it's cool, man. Like, I'm the only me.
Yeah.
And God is loving that me into existence. How am I responding to that?
Yeah.
And then I wake up and say, there's no meaning in life, or my life's terrible, or like it's not fair, all this or that. I'm like, yeah, it can be tough. Mm-hmm. You're the only one in the whole history of humanity that has the opportunity to go through this particular chain of events.
Yeah, at this present time.
Yeah, that's like, even going through the worst moments, like even with a little humility, that should create some sort of gratitude. Like,
sure.
Wow, okay, so what could possibly come out of this? Maybe it's worth me fighting a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I
think it's a great point. I mean, you said gratitude, and I think so many of us, we don't live out of gratitude. Yeah, we wake up, our feet hit the floor, we turn on the news. I live in Memphis, so it's like 4,000 murders on TV in the first 2 minutes or whatever, and you immediately are going like, oh man, this day stinks already, right? Or I got to get up and I got to do this. I got to go here. My kids need me to do this. It's so easy to fall into that instead of like, the Lord decided to put breath into my lungs again today.
Yeah.
Right. And I get to get up and live. There's so many people that are laid up in a bed and can't move, or there's so many people that passed yesterday and didn't have an opportunity to be with their family again today. Mm-hmm. There's just so many things that you could think about. And when you live out of that gratitude normally just incites generosity in us, the way we want to spend our time, the way we want to be for other people when we live from that gratitude. But so often we don't. Yeah. And we find ourselves in that place, and you are going, what's the meaning of my life? I'm in a never-ending Groundhog Day of laundry and all these things, and and we just don't go, man. Like, the Lord decided for me to live right now in this time for something.
Sure.
And you can even, like, when you're reading about the gifts or the charism St. Paul talks about, he basically says, like, we all have some of this, and it's easy to go, well, if everybody has some of that, then I'm really not special. No, but you're special in the way that God made you particularly to use that one gift or whatever, the multiple gifts he gave you, because you and I may have the gift of prophecy, but we're not going to use it the same way.
Right.
Right? I mean, the Old Testament's proof of that with all these different prophets and the things, the way they live their lives. But it's so easy to lose that when you're not living from a place of gratitude.
Sure. One of the great blessings of suffering. It's so often we hear suffering, suffering this, like, why is there suffering and all this? But one of the graces that comes out of suffering is the gift of gratitude. Whenever we patiently persevere and through suffering, and allow God's grace to really penetrate that suffering and be present with us in the moment. Whenever we know there's a big question, but we don't have the answer. That's probably what's at the heart of suffering. Is like, there's a question here. We know there's a question. There has to be an answer, but there's no answer in sight. Yeah. But it has to exist, so it creates this tension. But patiently persevering in suffering and, by God's grace, making it through that, then gives you a perspective on life, which makes you grateful for so many things. Because whenever you could complain about this or that, you think back of your own suffering or sufferings of others, and you're like, there's more to life.
Sure.
So it's suffering leading to the grace of gratitude, which is possible because of a holy perspective, which is a humble acceptance of God's story of salvation and how we take part in that. Yeah. That's cool.
It is. And I mean, you look back at like your story. I mean, you've been through a lot of suffering, obviously at a young age, and just what the Lord did. And I mean, you could look at it as, man, like, why did the Lord make me have to go through all that? Or you can use it the way you are to bring other people to say, like, look, that doesn't have to be your story. That doesn't have to be like the book doesn't end there. The paragraph doesn't end there, right? There's so much more. And I feel that same way in my own life. My Deacon Jeff, who's on the other side of the camera, or on the other side of the equipment, I mean, he was giving a grace talk at Curcio on a weekend my wife went to, and we hadn't healed after all of my drug issues. I was supposed to tell everybody this story for the first time ever, and she goes this Curcio weekend, and she comes back, and is in tears and hugs me. It turns out Deacon Jeff's a long story, but he wound up, his car broke down. And it sounds like a bad joke. I had a priest, a deacon, and 3 kids in a minivan going to Cursillo, but she was so excited to see him, and comes out. It turns out that he'd given this talk on grace, and what she heard out of that was, I've been mad at God. And she was hit by a car in college and spent like 6 months in the med. Probably won't be able to have children, may not be able to have, all your brain activity and function. So she'd already been through that. And then here comes this guy she marries. It's not the guy she thinks it is, and goes through all that. And so she had been angry rightly at God in her own mind. And Deacon Jeff that weekend, his talk opened up her eyes to, like, if suffering is just suffering, then it was for naught. Mm-hmm. Right. But if you look at it as the Lord has allowed me to go through this, and now we can use this to help others through our suffering, then it has meaning. Yeah. Like the you sharing your story, me sharing mine, people that have been through things that becomes part of their testimony and part of their life. It's just God uses that to open up the eyes of other people. And you're right. So often when we face suffering, we can just go like, Lord, why? Instead of, Lord, what? Yeah. Like, what do you want me to do with this? Yeah. It's just an amazing thing.
Well said. The gratitude is one of the secrets of the saints. If you want to be a saint, like, don't try to be humble. Like, we know that's it just doesn't work.
Sure.
I mean, I'm going to be humble today. I'm like, no, you're not, because even that, like, first of all,
very prideful.
You're off, heading down the wrong direction to begin with. Or as soon as you realize how humble you are and you take pride in that, it's like, okay, well, dadgummit, it's out the window again.
Yeah.
So the saints, like, I think one of the things that I take away from them is what made them holy, and the way they lived out their humility was this two-edged sword of gratitude and generosity. Yeah, because they both come up from the same point. Very humble. It requires humility, but to be grateful requires you to humbly recognize that you've been blessed with something that you don't deserve and that you didn't earn.
Yeah,
it could be a friendship, it could be a blessing, it could be material things, it could be life, anything. We can only truly be grateful if we realize that we've got something that we don't earn and we don't deserve.
Sure.
And it was given to us by somebody that had it and made the free conscious choice to give it to us.
Sure.
So, which then should stir generosity in our own hearts to do the same to someone else.
To give to others, yeah.
So
that's incredible. And it's when you start to see that perspective, you can read Scripture and see, like, when the apostles in Acts and they're just preaching, like, they can't stop preaching. They're going everywhere, and it's like Paul says, like, it's woe to me if I don't preach the gospel, or Jeremiah, it's in my bones, right? And they're just telling everybody, and then they ended that one scene in the Bible. It says, and they left rejoicing. They've just been flogged because they wouldn't stop preaching, and so they beat them. It says they left rejoicing in being found worthy to suffer. Right? It's like, man, what a different perspective. I literally just had my flesh torn from me for speaking about Jesus, and I'm happy and rejoicing because I found I'm worthy to suffer. Like, it blows. It's like, but when your heart changes, it's like no one wants to be beaten and flogged, but that point of, like, I was found worthy to suffer.
Sure.
I mean, what a life-changing perspective that is if we can ever get to that sort of place. Yeah. It's amazing. Well, I'd be remiss if I don't ask you the question a lot of people probably want me to ask you too. American Ninja Warrior, man. Like, I'm sure you get that a lot. Yeah. But I knew, like, when I saw that in your video, I was like, I don't watch that show much, but there was one night back then when I turned on the TV, and I remember seeing a guy dressed like a priest and going, is that guy really a priest? And then sprinkling holy water in the pool of water you had to run over and all of that. And here you are, man. Like, at first I thought it was some sort of hoax. A guy was dressed up like that. But what was that like? Like, I know you're into CrossFit and all those things, and you're the chaplain for the CrossFit Games, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, haven't done it for the last couple of years, COVID and everything, and just transitions there. But that's been a great thing. But yeah, fitness. I love fitness. So I grew up on the farm, and the priesthood is not like a very physical job. I mean, it's exhausting, and there's some days whenever it is tiring, but by and large, it's very emotional, spiritually, and psychologically taxing, not physically taxing. So I need that physical outlet. Sure. So fitness is just something I love doing. I love working out. I love intentionally breaking a sweat every day. Yeah. So I've got that there. A couple of friends suggested to me that I apply, and it was Father Steve Gruno with Word on Fire, and also Sean Bryan, the Papal Ninja. Those two kind of together really convinced me for a couple of reasons. I've got the physical and everything, like I do fitness, but also a priest, and so I said, okay, I'll try, I'll apply, and it was really a no-brainer, to be honest with you. It was kind of out of my comfort zone. I'm very introverted, believe it or not, very introverted, and I don't like attention. But at the same time, like I was thinking, if there's this opportunity for me to present a positive side of the priesthood on primetime television for 7-8 minutes, and for millions of people to see, and not cost a dime to the church except for, a day and a half.
Sure.
I drove down to Dallas. We filmed it, and I came back a day and a half later. So it was like I wasn't away from the church for a long time. It didn't require extra stuff. It wasn't away from the parish for a long time. I would be a fool to not do it. I'd be like the one who buried their talents.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. It was super fun. Is it the only presentation of the priesthood? Not at all.
Sure.
Not at all. There's so many amazing things of the priesthood, but it's one avenue that allowed me to evangelize to people that, as you'd mentioned, like would turn on the TV and see a priest. You wouldn't believe how many phone calls and emails I got after that from people saying, I was ready to give up on life, or I threw in the towel, or I was done with God, or this was going on, and I was praying for a sign, or this or that, and I didn't want to do anything about church. And then I see a priest. Then there's this Catholic church on TV, and then there's the guy on American Ninja Warrior, and there's all these responses, and that was very affirming to me.
Yeah,
there was a lot of pushback. People were saying, "Oh, that wasn't a holy thing. You should have been doing holier things."
Get out of here.
And it's it may not fit their mold of holiness. Sure, but it's what the Lord was calling me to do. And if I want to be a saint, I have to do what the Lord calls me to do, and not what you tell me to do.
Sure.
And so it's just such a powerful experience to do that. It was very formative too, because the Lord worked through it to show me that He wants me to be who He's creating me to be, and not who I think I need to be or who other people tell me I should be. Really cool experience, though. I'm kind of all over the place with that answer, but just a really neat opportunity to meet people where they're at, and to use the platform of primetime TV to get a positive thing of the church out there.
Yeah, well, man, and that's, you bring up a good point. I mean, we sort of take our priest and we put them on these pedestals and say, like, you need to look like this, sound like this, be like this, holy all the time. And it's really just a disservice to you guys too. You're people too. You're intrinsically different, right? I mean, you can transubstantiate. I can't. Those things.
It's a pretty cool gift.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Just call Jesus down whenever. That's right. Yeah. But it is. It's amazing. But sometimes we treat you guys like it's just like, put him on the shelf until we need him, right? I need my kid baptized. I need you to marry me, Father, or whatever, and then thank you, and put you back up on there. Here's your $25. Thanks for doing that. Yeah. Instead of just like, no, they're people too that need to be ministered to and need to be loved and need to be allowed to be who they are. Yeah. Right. I mean, this isn't, I'm a father, but that doesn't define every aspect of who I am, as a dad. Yeah. I have other attributes and other things and other, ways my personality wants to come out other than just dad. Sure. And I think we do a disservice a lot in the church by, we want our priests to just, you be there, you be that, and that's all you need to be. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think we've left a lot of priests to their own, in loneliness and isolation and a lot of things like that because of it, instead of saying, like, I'm going to embrace this person for everything and not, he's my father and my brother. Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of unrealistic expectations that are put on us. We're not 24-hour convenience store managers. I mean, we're broken human beings who happen to be ordained for sacramental ministry. And when we celebrate those 7 sacraments, it is pretty cool to know that God has to listen to me in those moments. Yeah, that's right. But then it also this has to change from bread to His body. Yeah. These sins have to be forgiven. Obviously, as long as I pray the prayers that I have to pray, right? Sure. But God has to listen to me, and that's kind of cool. But then also, like, there's other things whenever I have my own struggles or sins, and I'm like, come on, God, like, how come you're not listening to me now? Just like every other Christian.
Sure.
Got my own struggles, and one of the reasons I'm a priest is because I got to know so many priests at the just their human level, and it was just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's something we have to all be better about, is just inviting our priests in our lives and caring for them the way that you guys, I mean, you're constantly caring for us. It's right to be able to care for you guys too. You know, I know we're coming into the time here in a few minutes, but, you know, with every priest that I've talked to, it seems like, and anybody that's really in ministry, you have sort of a central theme that you wind up preaching about a lot. Like, doesn't matter what the gospel is per se. I mean, of course, you're preaching on the gospel on Sunday, not saying you're not, but it just seems like within all of us, there's a one central theme. Like for me, I'm not a priest, but to go out and to be an evangelist, I preach a lot about vulnerability, authenticity, relationship healing. That's always, no matter what I'm talking about, that's always going to find its way into something. What's that for you? Like, what is your message that you want people to hear when you preach?
Yeah. Be all in, keep showing up, crash and burn with joy and gratitude. and one of the biggest things is just chill out.
Yeah.
Just chill out. Now, that's not a free pass to heaven. I'm not saying, okay, yeah, the narrow gate is actually a wide open field.
Yeah, it's not like presumption.
Everyone can go. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying, like, we stress over things that are dumb.
Yeah.
The things that cause me anxiety or worry or preoccupation or stress are useless.
Yeah.
And they consume so much energy, and then they distract me from the things that I need to do well. So many families I'm with on a regular basis that are just struggling. We can talk, and we'll work through something. And the Lord's really given me more and more this grace to do this in the moments with the different families at different ways. But really say, you're acting like a 4-year-old, or this is really ridiculous.
Sure.
And y'all are fighting about this, but I'm about to laugh in your face about it because it's really not that big of a deal. and then you just see them. You can see some anger come, and frustration, and then confusion, and then it disarms them, and then they say, "Yeah, you're right. That was pretty dumb."
It's right.
So, like, I guess, show up, keep showing up, crash and burn, be all in.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to show people your mistakes. Like, we don't have to air out our laundry. I'm not saying that, but, like, don't be afraid to crash and burn in front of people.
Yeah.
And don't take yourself so seriously. You're not the last Coca-Cola in the desert. Like, there's yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't even know there were Coca-Colas in the desert.
It's a phrase in Spanish that say the última Coca-Cola en el desierto. It's just like, it's funny. You're like, you're not that special.
That's right. That's right. Well, one thing you said to me or not said to me, you said to everybody in the video I watched just from Word on Fire, was evangelization isn't what you do, but how you live. And it just struck me, because I think we're always looking at that as, I got to go out and do my ministry instead of my ministry being my very life.
Sure.
Expound on that for a second, if you would.
I guess it's kind of like those points I was just making. You're referencing that documentary that I had the fantastic opportunity to do with Word on Fire.
Yeah.
Bishop Barron and Father Steve Gadberry. It's called The Making of a Catholic Priest. Go check it out. Shameless plug.
Yeah. YouTube, wherever.
Yeah, on YouTube. Not for the sake of just hearing my story, but it's hopefully it inspires you to live the story that the Lord's writing in your life, and then also go get to know your priest in a personal way. Yeah. They're human beings. But that line right there kind of hits it on the head. It's not what you do, it's how you live. When you live with joy and you're present to the present moment, you're a conduit for God's grace, and God's going to work through it. That's why every time you see a little bitty 2 or 3-year-old kid just doing what kids do, like, it totally disarms you. It sets you free. No one sees a 3-year-old kid playing and says, that makes me mad that kid is so free. Right?
Yeah.
And if they do, you know that they've got something wrong with them. You say,
sure.
Well, you're a moron. Why are you saying that? Like, the kid's doing what the kid is supposed to do.
That's right.
They've got that freedom. Like, they're just living. They're living. And I think we can get better at just at life. There's a really cool song I just recently heard from Brett Kissel, a Canadian country singer. It's called "Make a Life, Not a Living."
Oh wow!
It kind of goes back to like some of the things you were talking about when you crashed and burned, like focusing on all these things, making a living, and it's like that's not what my heart's looking for.
Yeah,
my heart's looking for life, and so if we would concern ourselves more with life and less on, making a life and less of a living, man, one is, it's just it's so good. So, I don't have an answer to that other than whatever you're doing, just do it.
And
Just
do it well, right?
Yeah.
Oh, praise God, Father. What a gift it was to get to meet you and just to spend this time with you, man. You're an incredible priest, incredible man. And it's just been a joy. Where can people find out more about what you're doing? I mean, I know you have your parish in Little Rock. What's the name of where you are now? I know you moved.
St. Teresa's Catholic Church in Little Rock.
Okay, in case anybody wants to drive through there and stop and see you,
say
hello. But, I mean, you're with Word on Fire as a fellow. Are you traveling, speaking? Where can people find out more about what you're doing and how to get in touch with you?
I've a couple of different ways. I've got a very candid podcast that I do. It's called Agi Quod Agis.
Okay.
It's Latin. I should think of a simpler name instead of having to explain it every time. Agi Quod Agis, but
maybe hard to Google search if you don't know how to spell it. Yeah,
how do you spell that? But so that one of the best ways is probably just Instagram.
Yeah.
All spelled out, no spaces, no underscores or anything. All spelled out. Father Stephen J. Gadberry with a PH, Stephen with a PH.
Okay.
Father Stephen J. Gadberry, and that's where you'll get sort of how I share how I live.
Okay.
And funny little thing on that, like I'll get complaints from time to time about Instagram my post not being holy enough, because I'll put things of me weightlifting or shooting guns or shooting archery or going hunting or my dogs, things like that. People say, well, you need to have church stuff up there. And first of all, I'm not going to put a lot of ministry stuff up on social media because that's a very sacred moment with people's souls.
Amen.
And that's not for me to share on social media. If they want to share it, they can. But I take that very seriously.
Yeah.
And so what I share on social media is just my candid life. And so you can check that out, Father Stephen J. Gadberry on Instagram. That's really about it.
Sure. Well, look, folks, if you take nothing away, stop messing with the people about living their lives the way they live it. It's not cool, right? Leave priests alone that are actually people and don't mind showing you they're people. Well, Father, thank you so much. It's been a gift, and I'm excited to continue to get to know you and invite you back on sometime to come be with us again.
Great. That'd be fun. I look forward to that. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. All right, Father. Thank you. God bless.
Likewise.